A magic vendor is a very important thing, and yet Alfaria spends most of her time sleeping. Watching the world below, Ilaria asks Sarissa why she came to her, and Sarissa replies that she brought a list of promising candidates that the scouts selected, and as Alfaria looks over the list, Sarissa comments that the candidates for this year's festival are exceptional, but there is one who stands out among the rest because of his ice magic, and from his stats Sarissa believes that he could even one day become Alfaria's successor as an ice magic vendor. Alfaria admits that Julius certainly looks promising and that he could become her successor one day, but only if everything that has been reported about him is true. At the stadium will faces Julius and his team, and the winner will be whoever manages to grab the crown first. Julius could simply grab it since he is closer, but he would not be satisfied if he did not defeat and brutally humiliate Will in front of everyone. Will has no intention of losing and prepares his sword. Then Julius begins his attack by casting a smoke screen. Will cannot see anything, but he can still hear the footsteps of 3 people around him. He realizes that Julius and his team must be trying to surround him and attack him from all directions. Suddenly an ice ball comes flying towards Will from behind. He jumps out of the way and starts running to make himself a harder target to hit. Even with his vision blocked, he can still identify the location of his opponents by the sound, so when 2 more ice balls fly at him, Will jumps to attack Julius. However, as he does so, he is surprised by a 4th attack. Will is thrown back and doesn't understand where the 4th attack could have come from, since he should only be facing 3 opponents. His confusion is only increased when he looks to the side and realizes that Julius and his team haven't even moved from their original position. Still, Will is sure that he was being attacked by Julius, but now suddenly there are 5 of the first thing that comes to Will's mind is that this must be some kind of illusion magic, but the blows he is receiving are very real, and he soon realizes that the spell is too complex to be just a simple illusion. Julius is creating clones of himself, and the detail that he forgot to mention is that his clones also explode when he orders them to. One of these clones is right in front of Will. Then when Julius gives the command, the clone explodes and envelops Will in a thick layer of ice. This turn of events is exciting, but the audience is more focused on trying to figure out what kind of magic Julius is using. However, Edward and Orkner immediately recognize the technique. Orkner explains that it is one of the secret arts discovered by the talented ice magic vendor Alfaria. She has created and mastered 12 unique ice spells, and Julius is currently using the first in the series. This spell creates icy copies of the caster. Will is furious when he realizes that Julius is using a spell created by Alfaria. Julius just laughs and says that his natural talent allowed him to learn the spell on his own, studying it by himself. So even though it is only one of the 12 spells, Julius believes that he is now on par with a magic vendor, and this means that Alfaria is not that impressive, and that one day he will surpass her and cast her out as a fraud. There are many things Will would let happen in his life: humiliation, insults, but someone calling Alfaria a fraud is something he cannot forgive. So he comes out of the ice and charges at Julius to make him regret those words, but Julius uses his clones to attack Will with more ice ball. His clones move exactly as he orders, and they can also use magic, so Julius can keep Will occupied for as long as he needs. And that's not all. Once Will is in the right position, Julius can cast his spell through his clone, sealing Will in an impenetrable barrier of ice. When Will is completely immobilized, Julius conjures a giant ice meteor and launches it directly at him. With nowhere to go, Will ends up being crushed. The audience starts to applaud Julius's incredible strength, and even Edward has to acknowledge his exceptional performance, as he won the battle without taking a single step with his real body. With all eyes on him, Julius takes the opportunity to declare that his ice magic has become unmatched. After learning one of spells, he promises that he will become her successor as the next ice magic vendor. Julius did all this just to show off his power to the scouts, and the reports about him certainly seem real, but it would be terrible for his reputation if he ended up losing this fight after everything he just said. In a moment, Julius hears the sound of ice cracking, and in total shock he turns around and sees his ice meteor shatter into pieces. While Will appears practically flat, Will thanks Julius for giving him time to calm down, as he has a bad habit of acting impulsively whenever someone belittles Alfaria's name, but he won't make that mistake again. Julius attacks Will once again with his ice clones, but this time Will calmly dodges the attacks and appears behind Julius's teammate in One swift move will knocks them both out, and as he does so Julius's ice clones fall to the ground. From the moment he saw Julius's clone spell, Will knew it was incomplete. Julius was able to use the spell briefly, but he was never able to maintain it for long. That's why he needed the help of his teammates to cast the spell. If he needs all that help just to mimic a fraction of Alpharia's power, then Julius is far from her mat. Unlike guardian spells that act on their own volition, ice clones need to be actively controlled, and this requires a mental strength that Julius clearly does not have, as he needed the help of his team to use them effectively. In other words, Will is basically calling Julius a fraud. Julius is furious at Will's statement, so he tells him to shut up and attacks him with some of his ice roses. However, Will easily manages to cut through them all. When the roses hit the ground, they explode, creating another smoke screen and obstructing Will's vision long enough for Julius to launch his ice clones again. All of the clones start firing ice balls at Will, but he is able to easily dodge their attacks. Julius hates to admit it, but what Will said about his clone's spell being incomplete is true. The most he can do alone is 4 clones, and without the help of his friends he has limited control over all the clones, so the best he can do is stay on the defensive. However, Will should have no way of knowing which one is the real Julius, since all the clones are a perfect image of him, so Will supposedly never find him. But this is not an obstacle for Will, who manages to find the real Julius, and the real one, upon being discovered, despairs and builds a wall to defend himself from Will's sword, but he breaks through it and sends Julius flying with a piece of his own ice. Julius does not understand how Will could have found him so quickly, since all the clones are identical, but then Will remembers a fundamental difference. The clones are made of ice. The body temperature of the ice clones is exactly the opposite of the body temperature of the conjurer, which means that they are very cold. Normally, with good control, the conjurer can avoid the low temperature of his clones being detected, but Julius does not have that level of control over his clones, which cause the cold to cause ice to form under the feet of all the clone. Julius does not understand how someone who cannot use magic knows the ins and outs of this spell better than he does, but there is a simple reason for this. Will has been friends with Euphoria since they were children, so he has seen her magic very closely, which is why Will knows all the strengths and weaknesses of Euphoria's magic. Julius despairs and tries to fire another shard of ice at Will, but he barely moves as he slashes through the attack, and Julius falls completely defeated. Will says that he respects Julius and his talent, and that it is true that so far no mage has been able to replicate one of Euphoria's spells, but he has more news for him. Euphoria invented this clone spell when she was only 2 years old, so this is far from a perfect spell. However, Julius is showing off this spell as if he is even superior to Euphoria. Will's words make Julius feel very stupid, as he thought he was an elite mage for replicating Imaginder's spell, when in reality he was bragging about copying a child's achievement all along. Even though he thinks this is all crazy, he doesn't want to let it stop him from defeating Amaji. Julius screams in anger and summons 8 clones around him. Will can see that Julius is getting very nervous, and it's obvious that he's also trying his best, but Will has already had to deal with 10 clones of Euphoria who always bullied him when he was a child, so 8 clones of Julius are hardly a challenge for him. As Julius casts the spells, Will runs forward, dodging and stabbing one of Julius' clones right in the head. Julius sees this and realizes that it could have happened to him. The fear of what Julius throws at him, Will is always one step ahead and blocks everything easily. Finally, Will destroys all the clones, leaving only the real Julius, and to finish him off, Will runs towards him with his fists clenched and punches Julius so hard that the scene ends up being repeated 3 times just to show this beautiful moment. With that, Will